WBNE.
Hello, and welcome to episode 56, all about The Land of Shadow, Chapter 2, Book 6 of The Return of the King, being the 56th part of That's What I'm Tolkien About. Hello, my name is Mary Clay. If that's too complicated for you, just call me MC. And today I'm joined by Story Diver, aka Jess. Welcome, Jess.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. So you were recently on an episode of Bacon and Eggs, and you guys started talking about, I don't know, I guess reading and books that like you really enjoy and reread a lot. And you brought up Lord of the Rings and how you're this lifelong fan and you've read them a billion times. And I was like, what the heck? How did I not know about this? I was like, hello, did you know that we have a Lord of the Rings podcast? And then I immediately messaged you and was like, come on the show.
Yeah, you were really fast with that DM.
Yeah, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I've been like starving for guests sometimes where I'm like, oh my God, I have no idea who to contact. What should I do? And then meanwhile, Jess is just in our Discord community hanging out, having a good time, not knowing that I'm about to like Shanghai her into coming on the show. So tell me a little bit about your history with Lord of the Rings and like how you got into it.
So my mom is actually a huge Lord of the Rings fan. When she was pregnant with me, she was trying to push my dad to name me Arwen because she thought that was the best name. My dad vetoed it, obviously, because otherwise my name would be Arwen. And so I grew up, I always knew the story of the Lord of the Rings. I first saw the movies when I was 9, when they finally came out on VHS. I watched them with my mom, but I already knew the story by then, so it wasn't like a big revelation to me. And then I first read the books when I was 12, and I struggled through them because obviously they're not the easiest books to read, especially as a 12-year-old, but I was so adamant I wanted to get through them because my mom had them in like the one book edition. So it was a book that was over 1,000 pages long in tiny, tiny font, and I just wanted to brag to my friends that I read this book because it was so big. So I trudged through it and then fell in love with the story. And I read them probably about once a year since I was 12, and I'm 24 now. So It's a big love story.
Crazy. That's so funny that you say your mom got you into it because I literally just made a joke in the episode in last week's episode with Tyler about how it's always someone's dad. Like, Lord of the Rings is a very dad series, and, like, every single time I talk to guests there, I was like, oh, yeah, my dad was reading it. I was in middle school. So it's funny that your mom was the one who, like, inspired that for you. And,
oh, yeah, my dad couldn't care less. It's not his thing.
And I can also relate to being, you know, my, like, elementary, middle school self, like, going to the library and being like, what's the biggest book here? I'm gonna read it. I don't care what it's about. I just want bragging rights because this is a huge book and I've read it.
Exactly. You're not reading for the story. You're just reading to be like, I read 1,000 pages.
Yeah, exactly. And like, it just so happens that like this is actually a pretty good story. In fact,
it took a while to get into it, but once I got into it, I read through it really quickly.
I mean, like, kudos to you for doing that at, you know, that young of an age, because I can barely do it at, how old am I? 25. So, and then I also saw this, I shared it to the Tolkien About Facebook group. Listeners, if you're not a member of the Facebook group, you should join it. It's free. And I shared that it was a graphic that had been made, and it was like series you can read in less than 100 hours, and it had Lord of the Rings on it. And I feel like, yeah, maybe you could read that in less than 100 hours, but it said that you could read all 3 of the Lord of the Rings books and the Hobbits in 47 hours. And I was like, that's not accurate, because there's 60 chapters in Lord of the Rings. If you do an hour per chapter, which for me is being nice because usually it takes me a lot longer than an hour because I get distracted so frequently. I was like, no, you need at least 60 hours for just Lord of the Rings. So
Yeah.
just, I don't know, ridiculous. But yeah, just made me laugh because I was like, I'm an adult and I have trouble reading this book. So I don't think that's accurate.
No, I wouldn't say so.
So we are here this week to talk about Chapter 2, Book 6, The Land of Shadow. And I appreciate that this chapter starts right off the bat with action, because I was like, in my head, the way that this plot is moving and like my predictions are, the next chapter, we are destroying the ring. And I say that because the next chapter is called Mount Doom, so hopefully they get there. And I'll be really mad if they're there for like another 5 chapters before they destroy the ring. So when I started this chapter, I was like, okay, guys, we got to get things moving along. Like, we're supposed to destroy the ring in about a week, so let's do this thing. So I was glad that like they were running for their lives from orcs.
Yeah. I mean, it was funny for me because, so you told me which chapter to read, and of course, arrogantly, I'm like, I'll just pick up the book. I don't know where we're at. And I picked up the book. I was like, I have no idea what's happening. But It was nice that it started fast, because it was easy to kind of get into it fast, because it's got so much action right at the beginning that you just kind of fall into it fast.
Mm-hmm. I would also say that like at any given point in Two Towers or Return of the King, if you pick it up and it's the same in Frodo chapter, you can guarantee, like, if you're like, oh, I don't know what's happening in this chapter, it's about Sam and Frodo just not knowing what to do. Is
pretty much
is like their whole storyline, basically, of just making things up as they go along and being like, I guess we'll do this.
Yep, that's accurate.
Yeah, so they are running for their lives, and they come to a point where where like people are surrounding them from all sides and they're about to be cornered. So they like jump over into a valley and they land in a thorn bush and get stuck. And I was like, of course they get stuck in a thorn bush in Mordor.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, that's just very on brand for our dear heroes, Frodo and Sam.
I actually really like that bit because of how it's described, that they're expecting to fall like really far down and onto like rocks or something bad, and they just kind of plop into a bush. And in my head, every time I read that, it's like a cartoon character, you know, like running off a cliff, and like he's running in the air and then he looks down and falls. And that's always like the mental image I have at this point, is them just kind of falling and then realizing that they're falling.
No, that's an accurate portrayal of how I also pictured it, because I don't think, because the way that they can't see what's on the other edge or like side of the cliff, basically, because it's Mordor and everything is dark and terrifying. So they just kind of have to take this leap of faith. And yeah, they're like, we might die, but like, we're definitely going to die if we stay here, because then all these orcs are going to come get us. And that's kind of their motivation for this entire section of the book, is them being like, okay, we have to keep going. We have to go this direction and we might die, but it's our only option other than stay here and die. So it sounds pretty good. But yeah, anytime a character is like, well, I guess we have to jump off this cliff. Yeah, I'm imagining like like a Wile E. Coyote situation or something. I don't know. Do they have Wile E. Coyote in Australia?
I don't actually know, because I grew up in Europe.
Do they have it in Europe? Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Okay, good. It's just so funny, the things that like you think are universal, like cultural touchstones, and then sometimes you're like, wait, what do you mean? Like, something. Like, I really enjoy their like random TikToks that will come on my feed every now and then of like people from different countries asking questions for Americans. And there's this one TikTok, and it was like, why do Americans not have passports? And someone in the background was like, they're not allowed to have them. And it just like made me laugh, like all the things that like you don't know, that like the perceptions of like other countries have of you that you don't know that you don't know. Anyway, okay, I don't know how I got on that.
Yep.
But so they get out of the thorn bush, thankfully. They have like some issues because of the orc like clothes that they're wearing, but they get out, and Frodo is being weighed down I think, physically by the orc, like, armor, or I think it's mail that he's wearing, as well as the, like, metaphorical, that's the word I was looking for, the, like, metaphorical weight of the ring, which just gets heavier and heavier as they move closer to Mount Doom and further into Mordor. And I'd just like to point out, Sam says this very interesting line for me. He says, "I'd carry you on my back if I could." And I think that's interesting because my running theory is that it's going to end with Sam and Frodo going up Mount Doom, and Frodo's going to collapse, and Frodo is going to have to carry Sam. Wait, no, reverse that. Sam is going to have to carry Frodo on his back. Yeah, like Stanley carries Zero up the mountain in holes. And that's my running theory. So I just think it's interesting that I was like, foreshadowing perhaps. Or it's just me like reading really far into the text just to like
overanalyzing.
Yeah, just to like serve my own purposes.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that though. It's a lot of fun.
But anyway, so he like takes off a layer of the orc stuff and is like, okay, I feel a bit better. And then he's like, wait, no, I'm cold. And I'm like, Frodo, let's pick a mood here, bud. Like, you're getting a bit annoying for me. I understand we're in Mordor. I understand everything is terrible, and you don't feel good. But like, he was getting a bit whiny for me in this section where he was like, oh my God, I'm so tired. This is heavy. And then he takes it off, and then he's like, I'm cold, Sam.
He definitely feels like having an overtired toddler with you. Just like, I'm cold, I'm too warm, my feet hurt, I'm tired, I want this, I want that. You just kind of want to like shake him and be like, just stop, just shut up and walk.
Yeah, it's like, we're in Mordor, dude. Nothing is comfortable. Just suck it up. Like,
yeah, the sooner you get it done with, the sooner you'll feel better.
Exactly. And then like Sam, being a mom, takes off his cloak, to the elvish cloak that they got in Lorien, and puts it around him, and Frodo's like, oh yes, that's much better. And he makes a note that like he feels a little lighter, and I don't think it's a coincidence that that's because he put on an elven piece of clothing, which like has mentioned, it's like brought up multiple times so far that like whenever they eat elven food or like touch like or have like Galadriel's light magic with her or whatever, that it's literally like it has lightening effects on them, in contrast to this like terrible doom and gloom that they experience in Mordor, and when they like wear orc clothes or eat or drink like orc food.
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of the elves, Sam says, if only the lady could see us or hear us, I'd say to her, your ladyship, all we want is light and water. Just clean water and plain daylight, better than any jewels, begging your pardon. I like that little part that he has, and he's like, if it's not too hard.
Yeah, he's still so polite, even if he's not actually talking to anyone.
Yeah, he's like some water would be nice in this desolate land of doom. And so they like get their wish a little bit. I love this line. Ooh, it's creepy. Because the sun starts to rise a little bit, and you would think like, oh, like the sun fills the sky and it feels warm and it's like so happy, and it's like, not really. It says, under the lifting skirts of the dreary canopy, dim light leaked into Mordor, like pale morning through the grimed window of a prison.
Yeah.
So it's like hopeful, but not that much.
Yeah, it's a little bit. It's something, at least, but it's not exactly what they wanted.
Yeah. And they also, where is it? They also see some shape moving from the west coming back to Mordor, and it says, oh, as it went, it sent out a long shrill cry, the voice of a Nazgul. But this cry no longer held any terror for them. It was the cry of woe and dismay, ill tidings for the Dark Tower. And then this is where I was like, oh my God, they kind of said the name of the book. The Lord of the Ring wraiths had met his doom. So this is, at one point it even said, earlier up the page it says Theoden lay dying on the Pelennor field. So at this point, Eowyn and Merry have defeated the Witch King, and he comes fleeing back to Mordor, and that's what they've just seen. But yeah, the Lord of the Ring Wraiths. I was like, oh, it was so close. He almost said
Honestly,
it.
I've never picked up on that. Like, just you saying it now, I'm like, how have I never picked that up?
I I legitimately thought it said the Lord of the Rings, and I was like, ooh, and then it said Ring Wraiths, and I was like, Tolkien,
So
you were so close, because we haven't like actually had someone say the name of the books. There was one moment where like Pippin was like joking around and was like, here comes Frodo, Lord of the Ring, but that was singular. So, like, close, but no cigars. Oh, also, just kind of like, I don't know if I've ever brought it up before, but in the back of my head, there's always this question of like, so who exactly is the Lord of the Rings? Plural, all of them. I was like, because it's not Sauron, because Sauron doesn't have all the rings. So who is this mysterious Lord of the Rings? Which is a rhetorical question that you don't actually have to answer, but like, I don't know, this mystery of who is this guy anyway. Oh, and then they take out some of Galadriel's light again, and it has me wondering, like, is this light a finite source? I was like, are they gonna like run out of it, or are they gonna because they use it a lot? And he says I've got one thing I wanted, a bit of light, enough to help us. So are they like running out of it? Is it gonna like run out at like actually, now that I say that, it probably will. That like it's gonna run out at like the most crucial moment. They're gonna be like walking up Mount Doom, and they're gonna be like, come on, Galadriel, like Galadriel's light that saved us 5,000 times, that we're so lucky that you gave us. Like,
it's that
just
typical like horror movie trope.
Mm-hmm.
The horror movie trope of your flashlight running out of batteries just when you need it, kind of thing.
Oh, and then he's gonna like smack the vial, and it's gonna illuminate. He's gonna be like, oh, thank God, and then he's gonna look up, and like Sauron's gonna be right there. Perfect. That's how I want it. That is my expectation for the movie. It better be like that, or else I will be disappointed. No, I'm just kidding. So they stop and rest and hear a bit of water running, and they find a little like creek, and even though the water is like kind of gross and a bit, it's like they say it's a little like oily and it has a bitter taste, it's still water. Mm-hmm. And Sam says, if I ever see the lady again, I will tell her wait, what? Sam, I will tell her light. Oh, I read that wrong. That's why. If I ever see the lady again, I will tell her, light and now water. So I don't know if like that's literally like Galadriel's doing. I mean, obviously like the sun rises with or without Galadriel's permission, but like I like to think that she's just sitting in Rivendell with like a little, I don't know, glass orb watching them, and it's like, oh my God, these kids.
They need help.
Here, I'll nudge them in the direction of like the opposite of the game makers, honestly, in Hunger Games.
Yes, yeah.
Where she's
definitely.
like watching
help
over
them
them
as much as possible.
Yeah, she's watching over them, and it's like, okay, let me like steer them towards the river. Whereas the game makers are like, oh, at least in the movies, they're like, she's running towards the edge of the arena, and they're like, okay, we'll turn her around with a fire.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Galadriel's the opposite of a game maker.
Yeah. So they drink the water. It's fine. I guess I would liken it to like, this is a very United States thing, but when you go to a different state, especially one that's like not just the one immediately next to your state, but like a lot further north or something, you drink the tap water there and like it tastes fine. You know it's safe. But it's
not the same.
Off. Exactly.
Yeah, 100%.
And then same like when you're traveling to other countries too. You're like, there's a moment where you get a glass of water from the tap from the sink, and you're like, is this okay? Can I do this?
And then you get home and you have a glass of water at home and you're like, this is real water. This is what it's supposed to taste like.
Yeah. Everything else was just like a knockoff imitation water. This is the real thing. Yeah. So like it does the trick sort of, but still not great. But yeah, again, they're in Mordor, so like they kind of have to do whatever they have to. Oh shoot, and then I also forgot to mention there was like a good, I don't know, half a page where Tolkien was just mentioning the various paths. It's like if they went west, they would find this path that was eastward of the tower, and it went westward and it turned this way, and then there was this path that was a little bit south of where they were, but they didn't know any. And I'm like, Tolkien, I don't care about this, just like put them on a path. I don't care like the direction
about all the other paths.
Yeah, exactly. Like just put them on a path, and don't be he does this a couple times where he's like, Frodo and Sam didn't realize it, but further north was and I'm like, if they didn't know it, then
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Like unless it's a bit of like dramatic irony of like Frodo and Sam being like, oh, I wish we had water. Oh, well. And then Tolkien was like, they didn't know it, but if they had turned 1 degree south, they would have found a river or whatever, you know? But like,
yeah.
Otherwise, just cut it all out. Again, what I would wonder Lord of the Rings would look like if it was published today with like a modern editor being like, this doesn't matter, dude. And then Tolkien's just like slamming his fists on the table like, it does matter though.
It's so important. It's important to me.
It's the essence of the books, man.
It's funny because I read along with the companion guide, which has like little extra notes for like, oh, this river is actually, and like the history of the river and stuff like that. It's so much fun. And then there'll be moments like that where he's talking about all the different paths, and then you go to the companion guide and it's like 2 pages worth of, if you would actually follow this road, it would take you over to this town. You're like, why am I even reading this? It's even more stuff that has nothing to do with the story. But I like reading along with it because
that's so cool.
It gives an extra layer. And sometimes it'll explain things that like you don't realize are important when you're reading the book, but once it explains it, it makes so much more sense. So
that's so cool.
But yeah, I would skip reading the bits about the paths because they're just very repetitive.
That's so cool. I had no idea that this companion guide existed. And like, now I feel like I've done this podcast wrong.
That like redo it with the companion guide?
Yeah, I feel like I should go back and I should be reading it with the companion guide so that I can share these like fun little tidbits as they come up. But like we're in Mordor now. It's too late. There's no going like I've been doing this.
No, just start it all over again. MC, just go back to the beginning, start it all over again.
Perfect. Yeah, listeners, this entire year of podcasting, forget it. I'm gonna show. If you look behind you right now, you're gonna see that I'm standing there with one of those Men in Black clicker blinder things, and I'm wiping your memory, and you're never gonna remember this last year of podcasting. And next week we're going to start with the first chapter of Fellowship of the Ring, and I'm going to do it with the companion guide. Okay. I hope no one's like trying to listen to this, because I know people listen to podcasts as they fall asleep. I'm so sorry if that's you right now, listener, if you're trying to fall asleep right now. And then I was like, if you look behind you, I'm standing right there. Sorry.
Slightly ominous.
Yeah, it's fine. All good podcast hosts are a little bit ominous.
Okay.
I'd be a bad podcast host if I wasn't, right? That's how it works. Okay, anyway. Let's see. So, they stop to rest for a bit, and Sam takes watch over, takes like watch for a little bit, while Frodo immediately just like collapses and passes out. And he goes and stands like on a cliff or whatever and like looks up at the night sky, and there's this like great little passage that I was like, Tolkien, how dare you make me feel things? Like, this is a beautiful moment. There, peeping among the cloud rack above a dark sky, tore high up in the mountains, Sam saw a white star twinkle for a while. The beauty of it smote his heart as he looked up out of the forsaken land, and hope returned to him. For like a shaft, clear and cold, the thought pierced him that in the end, the shadow was only a small and passing thing. There was light and high beauty forever beyond its reach. And I was like, Like, why do you have to do this, especially in a time that's like extremely relevant for this like moment in history that especially like in America, where the rest of the world at this point is kind of like moving on with their lives because y'all defeated the corona. Congratulations. We're still back in the 1800s arguing about masks. And then like other side of that coin is like we're also apparently arguing about whether certain people's lives matter or not, which is absurd.
Yeah.
And so like disheartening to be living in the midst of all this turmoil. And even though some of this like work and whatnot is like a brutal awakening to our country and whatever, it's still hard to experience and witness. But I just love this, that like, where is it? The thought pierced him that in the end, the shadow, and the shadow has a capital S, was only a small and passing thing. There was light and high beauty forever beyond its reach. Like, just what a great thought that like, yes, these are like dark times and it feels like it's going to go on forever, but it's actually a small and passing thing. And that in the end, there is lightness that is greater than what we are like experiencing and living through right now, that will ultimately win. And it'll, so didn't mean to go that deep, but here we are.
So I was talking about the companion guide, so that's linked. And so it says what you just said, a frequently quoted passage which stresses the importance of hope and suggests that there are limits to what evil can achieve. And I it's a beautiful passage. It's honestly, like, I see so many people get that, like, tattooed on them and stuff like that. And it is just such a great reminder that no matter what's going on in your life, either your personal life or, like, the greater life, like you were saying in the US, there's still hope and there's still something to hold on to. And it's going to go away. It cannot last forever. So it's a really beautiful passage. Yeah. I really like it.
And it's also like a great visual image too of like Sam, this like small, tiny, innocent being in this land of like perpetual doom and evilness, looking up at the sky, and there's like a little star that's like piercing through the darkness. Just like great words, a great picture. Good job, Tolkien.
I think it also attests to Sam's character that even in the worst situation, he's still willing to look around and find that star and find that glimmer of hope, no matter what's going on around him.
That's also like a good way to show how the ring is affecting, or rather like not affecting him, because throughout this chapter there are moments where Frodo's like, well, I guess this is how we died, this sucks, I feel terrible, I can't go on, and Sam is the one to be like, well, we have to keep going anyway, and like, come on, Mr. Frodo, and all this stuff to like be encouraging and keep him going. And he's the more like hopeful one of the two right now. Yeah. Which is also like another great like, you know, metaphor for life, that like sometimes you need, you know, that friend and that person to be the one to be like, no, it's okay. Like, I know you feel like this is really rough and you're not going to get through this, but like, come on, let's get going. I'll be with you the whole time.
Yeah, you don't have to go through things alone. You can go through things with people around you.
Yeah. Beautiful. It's like Tolkien's good at writing. What?
I know. What? That's a surprise.
I know. Huh. So after they wake up and they keep moving, they have to like hide really quick because they realize that there are two orcs like kind of walking back and forth and patrolling a bit. And where is it? And Tolkien says, like, the narrator says, like, as usual, they were fighting. And I just love that. That, like, now it's become, like, it's a character trait for these orcs when we come across them, that, like, they're always fighting with each other. Yeah. And then I also love, it continues on with this, like, kind of, like, corporate talk that this conversation that orcs are having, and it feels very much like it could be a scene in The Office or something, where they're like, one of them is like, oh, we're supposed to be looking for like, stop what you're doing, we're supposed to be looking for something, and the other one is like, what does corporate know? They don't even know what we're supposed to be looking for, because they've told us this one thing first and then they told us another thing, like, what do they know? And then the other one is like, oh, like they're losing their minds. Like, what do they know? And it's just funny that like they have this very mundane conversation for being like
not
total...
what you would expect from an orc.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so they mentioned that like they're supposed to be looking for Frodo and Sam, and this is what they're arguing about. Is one of them was like, well, okay, well, first they told us, this sounds very familiar to like, I'll use the comparison of the US and masks, where first they were like, no, don't wear masks, because that's going to just perpetuate fear, and that's unnecessary. And then they're like, okay, maybe masks are okay if you are like immunocompromised or whatever. And then now they're like, yeah, no, masks are great. Everyone should be wearing them. And then some people are like, I can't breathe in my mask and my oxygen intake is lower, which is ridiculous. And that's not true. And that's like what the orcs are like. They're like, well, first they told us that we were supposed to be looking for an elf. And then they told us we're supposed to be looking for 2 people. And now they're telling us that we're supposed to be like looking for these kind of people. Like, we don't even know what we're doing anymore.
Yeah, and that you can feel their frustration with what they call the higher up, with capital H, capital U, and like that they feel that they're being cheated and lied to the whole time, and they don't even know if they should trust anyone anymore.
And then speaking also of like, can we trust who can we trust? They say, what's the black sneak got to do with it all? That gobbler with the flapping hands. And I was like, I know who this is. And it's also adding to this like arsenal of weird descriptions that other characters have given to Gollum. One of Faramir's men called him like a large black squirrel or something. But this is a new one that I also enjoy. That gobbler with the flapping hands.
Yeah. I mean, it's accurate.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's always funny about them is about these like weird descriptions is they're not entirely wrong, you know?
No, exactly.
Yeah, so obviously now we know that like Gollum is, you know, he hasn't died. Sorry, I'm all of a sudden looking at a plant and I wondered if it has been growing like this. So I like totally there's a plant sitting on my desk and I was like, has it always looked like that? Or did it just like suddenly? No, but it has. Okay, sorry. Oh my God.
I got to see that moment where your brain like switched focus.
Yeah, like I was fully talking.
I just saw you like looking around and then like plant.
God, what is wrong with my brain? Like literally fully talking about Lord of the Rings. I'm looking down at my book and then I looked up and I was like, plant.
Squirrel!
Okay, anyway. Yeah, so Gollum is sneaking around. Earlier in the chapter, Sam mentions, he's like, I don't think that Gollum is quite dead. Like, he's definitely still around here, and I expect we'll run into him soon. Yeah, so these orcs are... So Gollum has been running around, probably following Sam and Frodo, and the orcs know about it. And then, I don't even remember what they... Oh, because Gollum had found... I think it was Gollum had found the piece of clothing that Frodo had taken off. And, like, I also appreciate that about Tolkien. Like, obviously, I make fun of his insane attention to detail. But it is also nice that, like, literally everything they do, like, he doesn't just forget about it. Like, something as simple as Frodo taking off a piece of clothing comes back. And, like, he uses all of those details and moments to, like, add to the story.
Yeah.
So yeah, they found this like piece of clothing. Oh, and like one of the orcs mentions that he tried to shoot Gollum but missed or something. And then they start fighting about something, and then one of them kills the other.
Yep.
Simple as that.
Typical orc fashion.
Yeah. And Sam, as the other one walks off, Sam says, if this nice friendliness would spread about in Mordor, half our trouble would be over. So I love that he recognized that, like, man, we're gonna like get pretty lucky if like all we have to do is like sit back and just like let the orcs fight and kill each other and we'll be fine.
Yeah.
Which is how he got Frodo too. That's what happened in the previous chapter.
Yep.
So they keep moving forward, and Sam, bless him, at one point, he says, begging your pardon, Mr. Frodo, but have you any notion of how far there is still to go? And I love that because he's being so polite with a very like warranted question of like, so like, how much longer do we know where? Like, it's a very valid question for him to be asking of, like, where are we going and how much longer? But he's still, like, so polite and doesn't ask it in a straightforward way.
Yeah.
And this is where we learn that we are following Frodo's vague memory of a map that he saw in Rivendell.
Yep, a map he got a quick glance at months ago.
Yeah. Let's see. In Rivendell, before I set out, I was shown a map of Mordor that was made before the enemy came back here. Yeah, so this was, I think, even... So it's not even, like, a full map. It's probably, like, an outdated map. But I only remember it vaguely. I remember clearest that there was a place in the north where the Western Range and the Northern Range sent out spurs that nearly meet. That must be 20 leagues. So I was like, oh my God, 20 leagues. Are you kidding me? And he says that it's probably another week before they get there. And I was like, are you... Like, I was thinking, like, the chapter was going to end and it was going to be like, they had arrived. But no, like, they still have a long way to go. I was like, are you kidding me?
It is Tolkien. It's always going to take longer than you'd expect.
And it's because literally in his brain, he's like, the readers are going to be so confused if I don't explain every painstaking step of this journey. Like, they have to understand every, like, literal step that they take. They have to understand why they're going this direction and what, you know, what the other options were that they didn't do. And it's, like, so important to him. And I'm just like, just get him to the mountain, dude.
And a big part of that is from where this story comes from. Because I don't know if you know that story at all, of how The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings even began.
Isn't it, he was telling a story to his kids, or kid? I can't remember how many he has.
Yeah, he was kind of making it up as he went along to his son, Christopher. And one day he sits down and he goes, okay, Christopher, so where are we? Oh, yes. He closes the green door. And Christopher goes, no, Dad, you said the door is red. And the dad just kind of looked at him and went, oh, God, why do you have to remember every single detail? And he realized that his son was so hyper-focused on the story that he had to actually write it down to remember all the painstaking details, because otherwise his kid would be like, that's wrong. You said it was red before, now you're saying it's green.
So really...
So that's actually...
We have Christopher Tolkien.
Fault.
Well, yeah.
Yep. This hyper-focused child who's like, that's the wrong color. And then what do they do? And then what do they do? And then what do they do? So it's a kid's fault.
How dare he?
I know, children.
But that's such a kid thing to do, though. To act like...
I know.
I used to. It makes me so sad. I used to babysit, like, a lot of families regularly, and I haven't, like, seen or babysat any of them in, like, since March, and it's July, and it makes me sad.
Yeah.
Like a lot of them were like 2 and under, and wait, now how old? I'm trying to think. Like, a lot of them were younger, and I'm like, they're gonna be like speaking full sentences like next time I see them, and
I know.
it makes me sad. But anyway, but like, that's what kids are like. They're like,
I know.
So what next? And I'm like, can we just like focus on this one thing that we're doing right now? Like, like let's stop asking all these questions and then just enjoy the here and now of like what this story is. And they're just always curious, and that's definitely like a testament to like what The Hobbit is, because that was obviously the first one that he wrote. I wonder if so do you know actually if, because The Hobbit is obviously more of a like kid-friendly tale, do you know if he, so like that makes sense that he would have like sat down and like told Christopher this story as a bedtime story. Do you know if he like, if that's also what happened with Lord of the Rings?
No. So what happened with Lord of the Rings is basically publishers reached out to him and said, hey, your Hobbit book did so well. Could you write a sequel? And he went, no. And they're like, but could you please write a sequel? And he said, okay, but I don't want to write for kids anymore. I want to write for adults. And loads of publishers were telling him that wouldn't work, that he had to write a kid's book. And Tolkien was basically like, I'm going to do my thing, and if you don't like it, that's your problem. And so he did the thing. And so The Lord of the Rings was actually purposefully written for adults, and that's why it's quite a bit darker than The Hobbit and is much longer than The Hobbit. Because he thought basically the time span between writing The Hobbit and writing The Lord of the Rings, he knew that the initial readers of The Hobbit had grown up. And so he wanted them to have a new book to read for themselves and not to have to read it to kids or stuff like that. So The Lord of the Rings was written for adults.
Okay, cool. It just constantly blows my mind that like The Lord of the Rings is the sequel, like, of these two books. Yep. The massively long and dense and complex heavily detailed story is the one that he reluctantly wrote. Like,
yeah, that he was forced into writing.
Yeah, he's like, ugh, fine, whatever. Like, you would think it would be the total opposite, that he was like, fine, I'll write this like short little bedtime story. But like, no, total opposite. That's just so funny. I just like can't wait to delve into like the history of Tolkien, like himself, and like learning about like this mystery of a man who oh man.
Oh, that's why you'll like the companion guide, because it was written with Christopher Tolkien. He helped write a lot of it. So it's a lot of like, oh yeah, when my dad was writing this bit, like his office was like covered in papers and maps and everything, and like how long it took him to figure out, like in the book. So you were mentioning the was it the 20 leagues they still had to walk? So in the companion guide, it actually explains that initially it was this amount of leagues, and then Tolkien realized that didn't make sense, so he changed it to this, and then he changed it to that, and then he changed it to this. And it's like Christopher explaining how many times his dad had to change it because otherwise it wouldn't add up and that kind of stuff. So the companion guide gives like history on the book and links it to The Hobbit and the Silmarillion, but also gives history on when it was actually being written and what Christopher remembers of his dad and the notes that he's found. So it kind of gives you a good insight as to Tolkien himself.
Yeah, that's very cool.
I'm just here to sell the companion guide, apparently. That's what I'm doing.
That's funny what you say about the 20 leagues and Tolkien being like, no, that doesn't add up, and like him actually measuring it on the map and giving that. Whereas like I don't know if it was common for, you know, people in 1950s, 60s, like UK, England or whatever to know what a league is, but like he could have been like, oh yeah, it's 500 leagues, and I would have been like, oh yeah, I got it. Like I have sure. I have just about as much of an idea of what, you know, 20 leagues is as I do 500 leagues. So yeah, which is nothing. Actually, I'm gonna look at someone has told me before how long a league is.
It's long. I don't know exactly, but I feel like it's long.
Oh, let's see. It is about 3.5 miles. How many kilometers is that?
I was about to ask.
5.5 kilometers. So long.
20 leagues. That's a lot.
Yeah. So, but anyway, like, it's just funny that he was like, no, I have to put in the accurate amount of leagues. But like a league is such a like specific, and it seems to me like outdated form of like measurement. But okay, Tolkien. Yeah. So they stop to rest again. And Sam is like, okay, I'm going to go find more food or water, hopefully. Oh, he does this like really sweet thing where he gives Frodo like some water and some food. And Sam did not tell him that he had drunk the last drop of their water and eaten Sam's share of the food as well as his own. And like, yeah, what a good bud he is.
I know, he's so sweet.
Yeah. Like, I rag on Sam a lot, obviously, but like, he is a very like caring person. So he goes off to, when Frodo falls asleep, he goes off to find more water, and luckily he does find it. But along the way, at that moment, he caught a glimpse of a black form or shadow flitting among the rocks away near Frodo's hiding place.
Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
Interesting.
I wonder who that is. No idea.
Huh. Ugh, Gollum. At that point, I was like, get back here, because whatever the shadow or shape is, it runs away. And I'm like, you get back here, and we're going to have it out. Like, it's just so annoying at this point. But Sam goes back to Frodo and wakes him up, or I don't know. He's like, I can't stay awake anymore, but I also don't want us to both be asleep because obviously Gollum is following us right now. It's very obviously Gollum, and I don't feel comfortable with us both being asleep. And Frodo's like, okay, don't worry, you go to sleep, I'll stay up and watch. Nope. The next sentence is like, next
Frodo sat propped against the rock behind, but he had fallen asleep.
It happens all the time, like every time, and it's always
You just can't trust Frodo.
It happens with Sam too. Every now or like earlier in the book or in Two Towers, it happened with Sam too. Like every time it was like, okay, we're gonna take turns sleeping, and I'll stay up and watch. It would be like, but Sam dozed off, and I'm like, well then let's just like not take watch anymore. Okay, let's all just go to sleep, and I'm sure Gollum won't kill you. Maybe.
That happens to me so often now, because for those who don't know, I have a baby at home. And the amount of times, like, she'll wake up in the night and I'll tell my partner, like, don't worry, I'll, like, look after her, I'll calm her down and put her back to bed. And then suddenly, like, I'll open my eyes and it's 3 hours later, I'm like, I fell asleep, I did not put the baby back down. And it constantly happens. I did it this morning, actually. It constantly happens to both of us. We're like, don't worry, I got this, it's fine. And then you don't got this and you fall asleep. So I feel for Sam and Frodo for this, because I get it. It's so easy to just fall asleep.
I mean, but like we've all done that where like you lie. This happened to me actually like this weekend. I was like, oh, I'm kind of tired. I'm going to like lie down and take like a half-hour nap or something. And then like an hour and a half later, I was like, whoops.
Oopsies.
Didn't mean to do that.
Sleep is it's just too easy to fall asleep.
My favorite is when like you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, it's still like 8 o'clock or whatever. I can go back to sleep for another hour or whatever. And so you go back to sleep and then you wake up and then it's like, this has happened to me a couple times where it's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm like, oh, didn't mean to do that, but okay.
Yep.
Anyway, yeah. So Frodo falls asleep. And then they wake up and they start moving towards... This entire time, they've been trying to, like, they're, like, trying to move in the direction of Mount Doom, but they also have to, like, go about it a really, like, kind of, like, zigzaggy fashion because there are all these enemies, obviously, because they're in Mordor, that they have to be avoiding. So they are, like, trying to, like, work towards Mount Doom, and as they're getting there, they realize that there's an army of orcs coming like up from behind, and they're approaching rapidly, and they are like, okay, let's just sit off to the side and maybe they'll just think that like we're soldiers resting because they're wearing the orc stuff. And it also happens that this army, this like troop or whatever that's coming up behind them happens to be the like smaller breed of orcs. So they think that Frodo and Sam are part of this troop and that they have like they're like deserting or they're just being lazy or whatever. And like the captain or whoever yells at them to join in the march. And I was like, okay. Because I made fun of them in the previous chapter when they put on the orc stuff because they're like, oh, perfect, we'll blend right in. I was like, yeah, you hobbits wearing this orc stuff. No one's going to question that because I didn't know that like there were smaller breeds of orcs. In my mind, they're just like huge monstrous creatures, and then meanwhile here are these children playing dress up and thinking it's a perfect disguise. So I made fun of them for that and was like, that's not gonna work. Turns out it does.
Yep.
They like blend right in.
Orcs aren't the smartest though.
Yeah, that's something I didn't. Yeah, you're right, I did not take that into account.
Yeah, orcs are pretty dumb.
Yeah, so they have to like march with this army, and throughout this journey, Frodo is like on the brink of collapse basically, and Sam is just like watching him nervously like, oh my god, if he collapses, he's going to give us away and we're going to be eaten by all these orcs and this is going to be terrible. And they luckily like get to, I think they reach Barad-dûr. This is the name of the tower that I can't say. For whatever reason, my mouth won't form the sound dur. I can't say it correctly. Anyway, they reach that place, I think. From Barad-dûr. Are they there or are they just approaching it? They're somewhere near it, let's say.
Yeah, they're in that area.
Yeah.
They charged into the Durthang line. Nope, sorry, that's me misreading. Haha.
Let me check. A map.
I have been left alone. I am by myself. I am now the host of the podcast. I am now the host. I was left alone. Aha, I have taken over.
Yes. Yeah, I gave you 0 warning. I hope you did a good job.
It's okay.
Tyler and Ethan gave me this book, and it has these
Ooh,
very
more books.
helpful. Let's see, Maps of the Black Gate. Let's see.
Oh, it has maps. Oh, I love maps.
465. Well, what's very helpful about it is that it has maps of specific battles, and it shows. Let's see, that's The Hobbit.
I know one of my books has maps, but which book has maps? That's the question.
The other thing is I never know if I'm reading about something that has yet to happen.
Oh, yeah, spoilers.
But, oh well. At this point, I'm not as concerned about spoilers for The Hobbit, because I might, that story isn't as epic of a story, you know? It's
Yeah.
Or maybe, actually, that could be a blatant lie. I don't know. But anyway, this book is really helpful because it has maps of, specific battles and moments where it shows, and this is where, Éowyn and Éowyn and Theoden were, and this is the path that, Aragorn's army came up.
I think my maps are in a book I don't have in my office, and I'm not leaving my office to go get a book.
Oh, great. That's where the eagles come in. Darn, they don't have it. Okay. Oh, well. Had to check anyway.
It says they were drawing near the entrance to Udun.
Sure.
I mean,
okay,
we
whatever.
know vaguely where they're at.
Anyway, yeah, vaguely. They get to a point where, another army of orcs or troop of orcs kind of meets them. And as is customary with orcs, they all kind of start fighting and, yelling at it. There's, a lot of confusion because they're all, yelling at each other. Some of them have started fighting or whatever. And Sam uses this as an opportunity for Frodo and Sam to sneak away. And he grabs Frodo and kind of, pulls him off to a ditch, I guess, and is okay, we're safe now momentarily, I guess, and Frodo passes out, and that's the end of the chapter. Which is very different from what I thought it would be. I thought it was going to end with him being and they looked up, and there was Mount Doom. Nope.
I mean, as you say, the name of the next chapter kind of makes you think that, but no, not quite yet. Still got 20 leagues.
I think I'm just, getting really impatient now. Where I'm okay, come on, we've been doing this for 900 pages. Literally.
Especially if you're getting into the story, I think you kind of want to see how it's going to end at this point, I would guess.
Yes, yeah.
You're interested both from you've done so much work, it'd be nice to have it, the project kind of finished, but also from, a story point of view to know what happens.
Mm-hmm. And, the other thing is just that, I've been moving at such a glacial pace I've been doing this for a year now, and I'm can we just do it already? Can we get to this moment? So I'm getting really impatient now, and I'm ready for them to do it. But
see, that's so wild to me because you don't know this story whatsoever, and I don't have a single memory of not knowing the Lord of the Rings. I've always known this story.
That's so
and
funny.
I remember when you first announced this podcast, I was wait, you don't know the Lord of the Rings? I get not reading them, but you don't know it at all. And it blew my mind that there's people who don't know it. And I know that sounds really privileged, but it's just because I grew up with it as such a part of my upbringing.
Well, okay, so what's funny is I recently read someone left a review on iTunes, and the review was that I had in episode 3 or 4, I had spoiled something for them and they were mad about it. And I was
I saw that.
What could I have possibly spoiled that, or what could I have possibly said that early on that spoiled something?
I think they said it was something to do with Gandalf and Frodo or something.
Yeah, I had said that oh, well, I already know that Gandalf dies and comes back to life. And I was
okay, yeah.
Which is so funny to me that there's a person out there who knows less about Lord of the Rings than I do.
Yeah.
Also, like, I don't mean to, like, be ragging on this person, but, like, it was just like a really funny thing for me to read, because I had zero idea that, like, I thought I knew the least amount of things about Lord of the Rings. I mean, obviously now I know more, but, like I really thought, like, I knew nothing, so it just made me laugh that there was someone who I could have possibly, like, it's usually the reverse, like, people are spoiling things about the series for me, and I did it for someone else. I was like, I didn't know that was possible, so.
But I'm always so, like, worried whenever I'm on the Discord server, because I'm always like, if I say something and you don't know that, I don't want to be the person who spoils, so I just don't say anything. I'm just like, I don't want to risk saying anything that would ruin anything, so I'm just quiet. I'm just reading all the comments like, should I say this thing? Maybe not.
I'm so excited because in the Tolkien About Discord, I have a separate channel just for spoilers, and I'm so excited to be able to go in there soon. I'm probably going to have to, like I said, I'm not as, like, if I get spoiled about something that happens in The Hobbit, I'm not going to be as, like, worried or upset about that. But, like, I'm really excited, like, in a couple weeks, again, I say a couple, it's still going to be, like, another 8 weeks or whatever. But, like, I'm going to get to go in the spoiler channel, and I'm going to scroll back up, and I'm going to read everything.
Scroll all the way up,
Yes.
Yeah, you should.
I'm going to be like, okay, what did I miss? Because it's killing me that, like, there's a channel in Discord that I have zero idea of, like, what they're saying and what's happening.
I don't know how you have the self-restraint, because I am terrible with spoilers. Like, whenever somebody posts a spoiler, even if it's something that I don't want to get a spoiler for, I'm just like, too late, I have to read it now. So I don't know how you have done it, because I could not in your position. I'd just be on that channel all the time like, what, really?
I have the channel muted, but every now and then I'll accidentally click on it, and I'll like I'll read like one word, and I'll be like, okay, this word says Gandalf. I'm afraid to like move my eyes from that single word because I don't want to read the words that are around it.
Around it,
yeah.
Like, so just hyper focus.
What do I do? And so I like freeze, and I'm like, oh my god, get out of here, get out of here. Well, Jess, that brings us to the end of this episode. What do you have to share with our audience? Where can people find you?
So you can find me on YouTube at Storydiver. You can find me on Instagram at DiveJess, and on Twitter at DiveJess, I believe. Oh, this always happens. I never remember my Twitter. But it's linked on my YouTube. So if you'd go to the YouTube, you'd find the Twitter. You'd think I would have prepared for this bit. I didn't.
That's fine. I'll make sure to link it in the episode description.
Thanks.
And then also, what is something, a book, a TV show, a movie, etc., that you have been enjoying lately?
Ooh, well, I'm currently rereading for the millionth time, because if you didn't gather this already, listeners, I reread a lot of things. I'm rereading the His Dark Materials book series, which if you haven't gotten to, I would definitely recommend anybody read them. And for a new thing I'm reading Mackenzie's Mission, it's called. It's a book about, it's a non-fiction book about a family who lost their baby to a genetic disorder. And so it's kind of their movement to helping, to forcing the Australian government to changing how pregnancies are treated in Australia with genetic testing and stuff. So it's not a fun read, but it's really interesting. And I know the mom, she's a friend of mine, which is why I'm reading the book. But I would definitely recommend, if anybody can find Mackenzie's Mission and you're interested in genetic testing and stuff, definitely read it.
Cool. Very cool. That's What I'm Tolkien About is a proud member of WBNE. You can learn more about the network by going to WBNE.org, where you can find other shows on the network like Sincerely Us, which actually I'm on this week. I just remembered that. Yeah. I believe tomorrow we'll be releasing the episode on a Harry Potter sequel. I was on before to cover a Harry Potter musical, and Becca and Eni kindly asked me to come back on for a Harry Potter sequel. So yeah, enjoy that coming out tomorrow.
Dear listener, today's going to be a good day, and here's why.
Because today we're headed to Broadway.
Are we?
Okay, maybe not, but we're talking about Broadway. I'm Becca.
And I'm Eni, and we host Sincerely Us, a podcast for the casual musical theater fan. We discuss everything from strong female characters
to Ben Platt
to individual shows
to Ben Platt
to Act 1 finales and everything in between.
We even have a few experts on to talk about their expertise in the realm of musical theater.
It's an easygoing show for every theater fan. No experience required.
Listen every Wednesday at WBNE.org or wherever you get podcasts.
It's not a Disney fan cast, I promise.
The cover art is by Graphite, aka Vaishon Brandon. You can support him on Instagram at graphite.vmb. You can find the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Tolkien About Pod, and you can also join the Facebook group. You can find me on Twitter at MCWhatsup and Instagram at MCTurnedDownForWhat. You can support the podcast on Patreon at patreon.com/TolkienAboutPod. This week's sponsor is Danny. Danny, thank you so much for being a sponsor of the podcast. I appreciate that so much. And also, another quick announcement, I have a listener survey that I did as a result of completing the first year of That's What I'm Tolkien About, which is insane. If you haven't taken the listener survey yet, please do so. I want to be able to learn more about you and learn how I can improve this podcast. So the link for that will be in the episode description. Several weeks ago, it feels like now, the discussion question was, what is a good underdog against all odds kind of a story? Claire on Facebook said Newsies. Amy said How to Train Your Dragon. Renee said Friday Night Lights. And Mats said Mighty Ducks, and these are all just like top-notch quality answers. Amazing job. Yes. This week's discussion question isn't so much a question as a request. Please share one of your favorite hopeful quotes with me. It can be a poem, it can be a quote from a song, a movie, a book, whatever you want it to be. It can be a piece of art even. Share something that lifts your spirits and brings you hope. I want to see that. What is that for you? This is, of course, inspired by the beautiful moment from this chapter of Sam looking up at the sky and seeing the lone star and realizing that this darkness is not going to last forever and that light and good is going to come eventually. That being said, Jess, do you have any parting words for the audience?
Well, I think kind of talking about what Sam said with finding the star, to make sure you're always finding your star in your own life, no matter what's going on, and know that all the bad things will come to an end one day and there is good to come.
Aww. And that's what I'm Tolkien about.